Hi guys, how are you? So today is part 2 of Chaos to Calm with myself, your host. This is about our nervous system and creating calmness in the chaos of life, both internally and externally. So I'm Alison Stockton. If this is the first time you've ever caught me, do say hi, come into the comments, say hello, let me know where you're tuning in from. If you're coming back on the replay, let me know. I would love to hear from you. So this is about trying to support you in that chaos, as I've said. So I am a board certified functional medicine practitioner, somatic EMDR practitioner, trained in trauma informed, and a 2-year degree so far in psychology and health sciences, as well as that functional medicine part is really about helping clients and specifically women get to the root cause of what is holding them back and what is keeping them in a state of dis-ease, where you are feeling imbalanced and not really feeling enriched and having that vitality in your life because of that internal chaos that's going on inside, but also can seem that the external world is chaotic as well. Yes, given the fact that we know what's going on in the world, but what we can control and what's in our world at this moment in time. So today I'm going to talk specifically about a dysregulated nervous system. And the dysregulated nervous system, many people are walking around in this state of an unknown dysregulation because it might seem that it's the normal way to be, the way that it's been inherited from a family dynamic. That's why we work on those internal family systems and parts work of whether it's been nature to nurture and whether that autonomic nervous system response has always been a little bit dysregulated and hypervigilant. So from the dysregulated nervous system, first of all, we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system is something that's responsible for, yes, our breathing and our heart rate and our digestive systems, but also it's then activated by an inability to be able to relax, to rest, and to digest. So many people who have a dysregulated nervous system will have symptoms such as IBS or SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or other things digestive-wise that's going on, or just this feeling of discomfort very frequently in our system. And living with that and knowing that that's there, but aggravating that in our nervous system by the foods that we eat and our emotions, and when we're not able to relax, and when we feel in this hypervigilance constantly, and then with that disability to, or inability, should I say, to rest and regulate and to rest and digest, we have issues with food and eating food. So that's the fight or flight response of the autonomic and the sympathetic overreactivity, which then I spoke in part 1 about how that can disrupt our adrenal glands and how that disrupts our cortisol, where we're spiking very high and we just feel that agitation constantly, and we're not sure whether that's normal for us, whether that's just the way we are, whether it will ever be any different, whether we just have to get on with it, or whether we would actually prefer to live in a more of a state of ease. So leaning into the parasympathetic. And that parasympathetic can also be in an underactivity where you're not able to get to that point where you are in that rest and digest, where we want to have that parasympathetic nervous system responding. In part 1, I did speak about knowing that we want to have fight and flight. We also want to have the sympathetic, parasympathetic working together rather than not working at all, one or the other. So there wants to be a balance there, because if we don't have that, it's really difficult to create a state of homeostasis in the body. And that homeostasis is that calmness where we get to do the resting and the digesting, where we do get to sleep soundly, where our body gets to utilize nutrients from foods and use them properly, rather than eating and then just feeling agitated in our body, unable to respond in that parasympathetic way to be able to digest and utilize everything. And we're constantly on the go and our brains just simply can't switch off. And the central nervous system. So our central nervous system it can also be overly stimulated. And it can get heightened emotional responses, where I did speak in part 1 about, particularly for women, we may tend to say, oh, I'm just really hormonal. And actually we're not able to really connect to our emotional responses in a regulated state because the nervous system is dysregulated. So yes, if that nervous system is dysregulated, it's going to impact and activate our hormones in more of an unbalanced way. So often when we are saying, oh, I'm so emotional, it's my hormones, actually, yes and no. And it could be our nervous system impacting that hormonal response because the reaction is from both parts. So again, we want to have that calmness from the chaos of when we can come back and have a more regulated state so that we can feel into our emotions and our behavioural symptoms from that. Because if we are always in that dysregulated nervous system and then we start to react, and it's like, especially when hormones do change for women during that cycle, and it's like, oh gosh, you must be, is it that time of month or whatever where we can't seem to regulate those emotional responses? And then we have mood swings, perhaps perceived by somebody else as a mood swing, and it's just an inability to regulate that nervous system again, and then creating symptoms such as anxiety and depression, irritability. I spoke again in part 1 about the tonality. Somebody could speak in a certain way and that irritability would just be activated hugely for you. And you would feel super irritated. And then it would just go on. And that then becomes that mood. And therefore you become into a projector of how you're feeling because we can't manage it. We can't go into that introspection and really trying to understand and notice and why you're reacting that way. What's coming up in those moments? Why am I feeling that way? Why am I so irritable? Why am I having this difficulty in managing my emotions? And then there could be from that, in that emotional behavior of that dysregulated response, is the things that become then behavioral symptoms and the avoidance of certain situations that could then create attachment issues or social anxiety, where you want to be in the presence of people, you want to have that community, but actually your symptom is avoidance because you are then becoming more aware of how you behave, how your mannerisms are, how your moods are, and then we avoid them. And so that in itself then triggers that internal dialect of, well, there must be something wrong with me, I'm not good enough. And then we become more and more dysregulated because we feel that we can't actually be in that presence. So that chaos is continuing, and we haven't got a place where we're in that calmness. So that can also create, impulsive actions or, like I said, difficulty in social interactions as well when we're coming up into those points. So that nervous system again is like, I want to be in a social interaction, I want to be with people, but it makes me really nervous, or I become very self-aware, self-conscious. And so it's learning how to be in that presence of others when you are working on yourself and really noticing what's going on and noticing how you can really start to be aware. And the thing is, it's being aware of being aware is so important. And so when you notice that you've got these emotional behavioral symptoms because of that dysregulated nervous system and the responses from it, we can also have physical symptoms. So that sympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest situation for one, there's many people who are living with unprocessed, unhealed trauma and high functioning chronic stress that have illness, that have this physical manifestation, the manifestation of things like chronic pain, digestive issues. There may not have actually been a physical injury, that trauma from a physical injury. The trauma might be just that internal trauma where the nervous system is so agitated, so wired, and so just constantly on the go that hypervigilance can create tension through the neck, through the jaw, through the shoulders, through the spine, all over the body. When you're having those phases, that manifestation can trigger that chronic pain if we don't get to the root cause, if we don't manage to really find out how we can regulate the nervous system. And what happens is the headaches then start as well. So when we were talking before about hormones, it can disrupt the way that you absorb and utilize nutrients in the gut, because that rest and digest system isn't able to function optimally. So the headaches then begin because you've got this stress through the back of the cranium, through the nerves, through the vagus nerve, which runs through the head, and it's the 10th cranial nerve. We might have that grinding of the teeth because we're so either angry or we're not able to really process and come back and find, like I say, that homeostasis where we can feel just calm and centered in ourselves. And that can create then, it creates PTSD all by itself. So if you've had trauma which has been unprocessed, you then all have chronic stress and you're not able to process it, that manifestation of then having illness and it being chronic illness and it being continual illness all by itself can create a different level of having PTSD, because we can't then calm down that nervous system and we're feeling like, how are we ever going to get out of this cycle of pain? What are we going to do about this cycle of pain? What are we going to do when I feel like I'm so exhausted? I spoke on part 1 about the polyvagal. So we've, the fight, flight, freeze and fawn. What are we going to do? What are we going to do if we're exhausted and we're so fatigued and our body is then creating this malaise, and we have, inverted commas, it may lead to chronic fatigue syndrome. It may lead to the burnout where we just literally can't function because our nervous system has been so dysregulated and so hypervigilant for such a long time. How are we actually going to get through this? How are we going to actually move through life in a place where we feel more connected to ourselves and more healed in ourselves? And the healing takes time. There is no quick fix to anything, especially when you have all of these puzzle pieces that are coming together, these puzzle pieces of the illness, the puzzle pieces of the dysregulated nervous system, the chronic stress and overwhelm, the poor lifestyle habits that have been accumulated because you don't feel that you're able to be present in this, all of these things, the emotional trauma, the physiological perhaps trauma, all of the things that have led to not eating and taking care of yourself, the avoidance of self-care, the avoidance of loving yourself, the avoidance of self-compassion, and even the avoidance of compassion for others. So I wanted to tune that in and come back into this revolutionary modality that I've trained in, and it's somatic EMDR. And from the words of Dr. Bessel van der Planck, it is one of the best healing protocols right now to work with EMDR and somatic, because it's in the body. So we stop just talking and regurgitating the trauma all the time. Ariel Schwartz, we also work with the polyvagal theory and all of these elements of working with the somatic and working with the body and working with not just the head down of what's in the thoughts and the memory and the processing of what happened in the mind, we then get to reprocess it and move it through the body. So 80 to 90% of people who have experienced EMDR, somatic EMDR therapy, have felt incredible change, positive change within just 3 to 5 sessions. And this is because it's altering the neurobiology of the trauma that's stored in your body. So it can also help with the chronic pain. It helps to address and notice the patterns of behavior of what's going on. It gets you to feel free from the old stories and the old way of being. And it gets you to recognize and be more in the present. It gets you to feel that you can restore safety in your body. You get to make more decisions about, what's going on there? Why am I feeling that emotion? Where am I feeling that in my body? Why am I feeling agitated? Where is that pain coming up? Do I feel that pain straight away when somebody speaks in a certain way, or what is it? And part of the somatic way that we work with somatics and EMDR and parts work and cognition, all of these things are, you could say, reprogramming and reprocessing. So you really start to believe in yourself. So you really start to notice and can calm down that anxiety that is stored within you, or the anxiety that's fired up from certain situations because you've been activated. And it starts to really attune your body and your mind and your being into the recognition of the woman that you desire to become, because you're ready to work on that nervous system, you're ready to work on your body as a deep core, and you're ready to really identify the root causes of what is keeping you stuck in this state of just not being able to move forward, just not being able to hold on to those loving, nurturing relationships that you so desire to, and noticing that actually what it's like to live without anxiety, when you can address it and when you can move through it. So the somatic EMDR is about the memory reprocessing, and the nervous system stores the memories of how you respond. So too does your body. That whole part of the body keeps a score is very true, but we also get to reprocess those memories so that we can move through your body with more freedom, move in your mind with more freedom, move with more positivity and more connection, calming down that chaotic way of being into that calmer state of just simply being. And that could be something as simple as havening. We're moving from the side to side, we're working with that bilateral movement. We're noticing what that feels like in that self-touch to create safety, to create awareness, and to create calmness in the body. It's not this and creating heat and like a Reiki motion, but it's just simply just that calm connection of your body. The havening could be from your head, down through your face, through your jaw. We could be going into vagal toning, stimulating through that vagal nerve, through the ear, through the face. We could come back into bilateral stimulation. It doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional way of eye movement, which is the fingers going from side to side, and we're following the eye movement. That doesn't have to happen, because that can be unsafe for some. It can feel distressing for some to follow that. So the eye movement desensitization reprocessing part is part of what we do when we're working with somatic EMDR, but it's not all of it. It's not a full session of just working through that eye movement. It's about the connection to your body. It's about the connection to yourself. And it's about calming down and finding calmness, even in the states when you know you're going to be chaotic. Could be as simple as going to an airport where you feel that anxiety, or you feel that stress coming on because you have a memory of something that wasn't very pleasant in the past. That is just an example. So it's giving you tools and techniques to understand how you can calm that down in those moments and really attune to yourself so you can be in your healthiest state and not always in sympathetic nervous system response, but can attune to the parasympathetic nervous system response. And you can calm down those systems that need to work to rest, to digest, to reprocess, to absorb nutrients, and to absorb a healthier way of being. So that's part 2. We've spoken about dysregulation here, and we've spoken about the somatic EMDR, informed work that I do with my clients that really brings them back in, which is connected to functional medicine and integrative health, because it helps to find a semblance of balance where we can work with the body, not just the symptoms, and really start to have that healing process. So if you would be interested to find out more about the somatic EMDR informed practice with myself, we have a special offer on at the moment where you get to have 5 sessions at a discounted rate. So you can really start to learn more about it in your body and your mind and your soul. And if you want to know the details about that, drop a comment below saying somatic EMDR sessions, and then we will drop in and give you all the information of how you can join to take advantage of those 5 sessions. I will talk more about it on the next part 3, but if you want to know anything about it right now, drop the comment, or of course DM me and we'll let you know more about it. And for now, just take that deep breath, Notice where you're at. Notice what's going on around you. Reorientate yourself back into your room, where you are, away from the screen. And just breathe in and just